Hello, everyone. So nice to be here with you. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person, but as it's 4 in the morning for me right now, I decided to record this. So we are going to talk about playwriting, and I've got a PowerPoint that I want to share with you. And let's see how that goes. So, writing a play. Here we go. You want to write a play, or maybe you've already written 100 plays. Either way, we're going to talk a little bit about the process. So, what are you going to write about? First, you need an idea. What's a play that only you could write? You know more about yourself and more about your family than anybody else in the world, so that might be a place to start. You could check out the playwright Michel Tremblay, who wrote exclusively about his family, but of course, everybody has one. So the ideas and themes are really very universal. Of course, in the beginning, he didn't even change the names of the characters, so it made it a bit awkward at family gatherings. So, what are some stories that only you could tell, or maybe some stories that you feel have not yet been told fully or explored, or stories that really need to be told, or issues that need to be explored, maybe some social justice issues, or things that you really feel people need to be educated on? One way to go. What is something that you know a lot about? Sometimes people are told they should just write about things they know. Well, I would expand that to say, write about things that really interest you. What are you willing to research? What do you really want to know about? That might be something you want to write about. Then ask yourself what makes your story theatrical. It's not enough to have a story, it has to actually look good on stage. People have to want to see it. Does it have enough action? Or is it so internal inside people's heads that maybe you'd be better off just writing a novel? Think about that. Then why would your audience want to see this play? What's the hook? What is it about it that makes it an exciting play? And who is your audience? Who are you writing this for? You writing it for adults? Are you writing it for kids? It's going to change the language, at least in your story, and the way you tell your story, depending on your audience. So you've got an idea. Now, what are you going to do with it? Well, you may want to start by writing a synopsis. What's the play about? What happens in this play? Do you want to start with an outline, or do you want to just jump right in? Do you want to write it as prose first? But you have to know what's going to happen. What is your inciting incident? What is it that happened just before the play began that makes it important to tell the story of this play? Or what's happening right in the beginning of the play that changes everything? We're watching a TV series right now out of France called Call Your Agent. And the main character, the guy you think is going to be the main character, dies in the first episode. And so the whole rest of the TV series is dealing with the fallout of this guy's death. Find out what happens. Why is this play being told right now? Then put that idea, that entire synopsis, into one sentence. This is just a way of really clarifying and making it very succinct in your own mind. What is this play about? And themes. What themes are you going to explore? Some of the big ones: aging, death, revenge. What is your play's theme going to be? And characters. Who is this play about? Consider writing a character driven play so that you're not writing out this fancy plot and then inventing characters that are going to do things that they may or may not even want to do, but they have to serve your plot. Think about making them important. But you do need a plot. What happens? The plot, of course, is the events that make up your story. So you're going to start with an introduction. The audience has to see who this play is about. They have to see what the play is about, where it takes place, when it takes place, and why does it take place. That's your inciting incident. So make your introduction interesting as you introduce everybody. Rising action and conflict. If your play doesn't have any conflict, it's going to be a very short play because everything's going to wrap right up cleanly and it's going to be pretty boring. So you are going to need some conflict. What's your conflict about? What goes wrong? Who's causing the problems in your play? Is it a person? Man against man, man against nature, man against himself? What's going on here, right? What's your rising action as things get more exciting? And then finally, your climax. What's the worst thing that could happen to your characters? Maybe it does happen. And then how do they deal with it? You need a resolution. After your climax, you got to wrap it up. Doesn't mean that everything has to end happily, but it has to end in some way. You have to wrap it up. Play structure. What is the best structure for the play that you are going to write? 10-minute plays have become super popular in North America as of late. There are tons and tons of contests and festivals for 10-minute plays, and many of them are open to the whole world. So you could be entering them. Google 10-minute play festivals. And if you want to write for that, format, just remember, you've got to keep it simple. It's only 10 minutes. You're not going to change scenes. You're only going to have a few characters. You're going to have a fairly simple plot line, one main central idea. Don't go off on all sorts of tangents. Wrap it up. And do keep it to 10 pages because they're very clear about that. They don't want it a minute over 10 minutes. The next step is one act. Now, I've said from 15 minutes to an hour or even an hour and a half. But of course, it's anything over 10 minutes. I'm not sure why you'd write an 11-minute play, but you might. Again, keep your cast size small and keep your scene changes, if any, very simple. You don't want a whole lot of fooling around because if you're going to present this one act play, chances are you're doing it on an evening when there's more than one act play, and nobody's going to produce it if it's too complicated to produce. So keep your cast size small, keep your set simple. And then full length. Full length is assuming that you are the only thing on for the evening, just your play. You may or you might not have an intermission. It's become quite popular to have a 90-minute intermission free play. Still technically a one act, but it is the entire evening's entertainment. But you could also have one or two intermissions involved. Characters. How many characters do you need to tell this story? Can you tell your story with less characters? Can you create an amalgam character? That means you've taken several characters and you've combined them into just one. The audience thinks it's the same character, but in your head, you know that the original story involved a lot of people and you've just combined some people. Is there a main character? There are stories that have more than one main character. It's possible. But there probably won't be a whole lot of main characters. Not there. You might be writing an ensemble piece where everybody is equal, or you might have a main character. Either way, you have to know these characters very well. And you have to know what they want. What is their objective? What are they trying to prove? What are they trying to get from somebody else? What do they want by the end of the play? And by the end of the play, you should be able to answer the question of whether or not they got what they wanted. Did they meet their objective or did they not? If you've got a play with more than two characters, an antagonist and a protagonist, if you've got more than that, you might want to consider writing in a character who is actually helpful to the main character, as well as those that are against him or her. Finally, here's some tips to get you started. Find an important question that your play is going to answer. And by the end of Act One, you've probably got a question that is really burning in the minds of your audience, and they're dying to know the answer to that. So make sure that you answer that by the end of the play. And know the world of your main character or characters. Do the research. If they don't live in the present, find out what life was like for people in the period in which you are setting it, and then remain really consistent. And know how your characters think. You could write out their journals. You could write letters from their perspective. They could write letters to other people in the play, people they love, people they hate, expressing how they feel, or even just what's going on with them. So you really get to know how these characters think. Consider writing a character driven play. I've said this already, but I'll say it again. Rather than planning a story, make it about the people. It'll be much more interesting. Create believable dialogue. Really listen to how people talk to each other and try to emulate that on stage. Don't make it stilted or phony. Do people really talk the way you're writing? Make sure that's the case. And then make sure that all of your characters have their own voice. It's not uncommon for you to put your voice into one of the characters, and that person may well talk like you and think like you. It's pretty common to have the author's opinion voiced by one of the characters, but make sure that not everybody just sounds like you. Make sure that everybody's got their own voices and their own thoughts and expresses themselves in their own ways. So if there's a popular expression that's used by one character, make sure nobody else gets it. And the characters might have different educational backgrounds that would be reflected in the way they speak, or they might come from different regions, so they are going to have different dialects or slightly different accents. So there's going to be something about their speech that's going to be different one character to the next. And no talking heads. Make sure that you show, don't just tell. Even if you've got two people that are sitting down in chairs talking to each other, what is it that they are doing? Try to give them something to do. Action is so much more interesting for the audience than sitting and just listening. And finally, make the stakes really high for your characters. They have to face tough situations, make hard choices, feel things very deeply, have strong opinions on things, care a lot about what's going on around them, be multidimensional. Don't make them flat, avoid stereotypes. Make sure that these are real people that you're putting into your plays. And start your play as far into the story as possible. Cut out all the boring bits. If you can read the first page of your play, if nothing happens in the first play page, if all they're doing is saying, hello, how are you? Try starting it after that. Remember, you don't have to show how the character got onto the stage. It's perfectly okay if the curtain opens and they're in the middle of a fight or in the middle of a discussion or a disagreement. You start at an exciting point. Also, bear in mind that if you're submitting your play to somebody else to produce, you've got to catch them. You've got to catch them pretty quickly. If they're reading the first page and it doesn't already grab them, if it hasn't hooked them in already, chances are they're just going to toss it in the discard pile and you won't get produced. So make sure that you start off with a bang and enjoy the process. No point in writing a play if you're not having fun doing it. So do whatever works for you. Some possible things that work for some playwrights are things like creating a web where you put the main character or perhaps the main theme in the middle of the page, and then all around that you connect it up to other things. And if you are putting in a theme, you could put in all of the different scenes that you could write that would demonstrate your theme. Or if you're putting in a character, what are all the things that happen to your character or that the character makes happen? So in that way, you're creating a literal spider web of all of your ideas. That works for some. Or writing an outline very succinctly. What happens first? What happens second? And consider writing the backstory for each of your characters. Their lives didn't start on the first page of your play. They had whole lives before that moment. So write out those whole lives so that you really know why they're starting where they start. And don't be too tied to the first draft. Work with a dramaturg if you can. At least give it to somebody whose opinion you value and have them read it and consider their questions when they don't understand what's going on or when they're wondering why you did something a certain way. And don't be afraid of rewrites. It's all right to write it over and over again. It's even okay to start over from scratch if that's what your play needs. Or do none of the above and do whatever works for you. Find that process that's going to be successful for you, and have fun doing it. So that's my talk, and I wish you all the best in all of your plays.